As you can tell, down in my home arcade, I have not a lot of space, and as a result, I have to try to maximize my space as much as possible, and that's why I was a pretty big fan of the Arcade1up Partycades when they debuted. However, when it came to Partycades, I've owned a bunch of different types that I've went over on this channel. I've also gotten rid of some as well. And part of that comes down to the quality of them. And there's a specific era of Arcade1up Partycades that, as far as I'm concerned, stand above the rest. And even as far as Arcade1up units generally go, these units are just overall well-built, good quality Arcade1up units. And in this video, I'm going to go over what those are and why, if you're looking at adding Partycades to your collection in the near future or trying to seek out some secondhand, these are the ones to look out for. So let's take a look. So to start, in 2022, there were basically 4 units that came out that were, in my opinion, just a response to some of the deficits of the early generation Partycades. And what I mean by that is, if you look at some of the older Partycades, they lacked things like light-up marquees, they lacked things like variable sound settings, they typically lacked things like proper settings so you can change screen settings or game settings, and in a lot of ways felt like a pretty big step back even from some of the other 3/4 scale cabinets that were on the market. However, these units, they entail the Street Fighter II Partycade, they entail the Miss Pac-Man Partycade, they also entail the Super Pac-Man Partycade. They also have one unit that I unfortunately never got my hands on, and it's somewhat of a collector's item amongst Arcade1up fans, and that's the Defender unit. But these 4 units made up, as I understand, some of the best examples of Arcade1up really listening to their consumers and really trying to create something that met a lot of the finicky standards of this community. And it might not sound like a big deal, but if you look at like my Street Fighter unit over here, you can see that there is a good quality marquee, there's a good quality backlight on this marquee, and that goes the same for my Miss Pac-Man Partycade, my Super Pac-Man Partycade. They all have good quality graphics on the units. Previous Partycades typically just had them printed onto just a wood standard marquee, and that was it. Now, I'm not a big over-the-top guy about these light-up marquees like some Arcade1up purists are, but as far as comparing these even to some of my units that do include them, these just look really good. Further to that, we also had a lot of improvements on the control decks, on the buttons, on the joysticks, and we also had things added in place like variable sound settings. These things might not sound like a big deal, but it really made these Partycades feel like a premium package, ultimately. And if you look further into the actual units themselves, every single one from this era, the 2022 era, that I guess the easiest way to designate it is the light-up marquee models. These light-up marquee models all had option settings. Now, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but I've done some reviews on the earlier generation Partycades, and one of the issues that I had with them is that they didn't have options to change your screen settings. So you ended up having, in some cases, like one of the first generation 8-in-1 Pac-Man Partycades, a blurred screen, or basically very choppy looking visuals. And this just made for, in my opinion, an uncomfortable experience. The other thing as well that we saw in units like the Street Fighter II Partycade, where you had 2-player focused games like Captain Commando or, of course, Street Fighter II, while you didn't have a deck that had all of the space to do 2 players, you did have a comfortable 1-player control deck, but Arcade1up gave users options. They added a USB port so you could play 2 players. You could plug in a controller or another control deck, even if it's USB based, and play with a second player. And this made a unit like that have a lot more replay value, something that I've talked very poorly about my NBA Jam Partycade over here because it doesn't have even some of those basic features. No USB port, none of these things. And this is something that, in my opinion, was a lazy implementation from Arcade1up. The other thing as well that you'll see in these units is generally the game selection was a lot meatier. We had a lot more games on each of these units. Now the Street Fighter one, you don't have as many games as you get on your Miss Pac-Man or your Super Pac-Man unit, but we got a pretty good game selection, varied game selection, and on these units we have a ton of different games to play that, in my opinion, are just generally appealing, and they add a lot more to the replay value of these devices. Now, I'm not going to say that these are perfect, but they just generally feel good, and they seem premium compared to something like my NBA Jam Partycade that, unfortunately, it lacks a lot of features, and it, to be transparent, doesn't really get a lot of playtime as a result. We also had standards in these units with speaker sound. Now again, I'm not a massive purist about the way these things sound. I have some mono-based Arcade1up still. I have the Countercades, which are mostly mono as well. But it was just, again, another addition to the features and the quality of these units that you lacked in some of even the later Partycade models and the previous Partycade models. So if you're still seeking out Partycades to build out your arcade, or you're even seeing some still being advertised, as I'm seeing on like Costco's website, and I believe TSC even still lists some of these, I would definitely really consider the four that I'm talking about. And I didn't go too deep into the Defender Partycade because I don't have experience with it other than watching videos on it. But these four seem to have made up the best quality Arcade1up Partycades that really came out from that company. And I don't believe you can still purchase these Partycades brand new, so you probably would have to get them secondhand. But if you're in the market or shopping for these on Marketplace, I think the easiest telltale that you'll get a good quality one of these Partycades is that they have the light up marquee. And that seems to be corresponding to all the other features that I'm talking about. It's not to say that the later generations like the NBA Jam one don't have, you know, variable sound settings or options for the screens and the games themselves, but it feels a lot cheaper. There's a lot of concessions that were made on these, probably for cost-cutting purposes, that make it way less desirable and way less exciting to use than these ones that I've listed.